Hi, if you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, no pictures live stream. Please listen to this essay as you would a radio broadcast as you're driving along in your car, your truck, or put in those earbuds and take it all in while you're on public transport. In this essay, I'd like to talk about something that's happening simultaneously across the Western world in what clearly is a managed media propaganda narrative, and that is that all the prisons across the world, and I'll use Britain as a classic example for the moment, it seems to be prominent in the news, that all the prisons across the Western world in the exact same countries that are subject to mass migration, by the way, that these prisons are overflowing. So the only way to deal with this overcrowding is to release prisoners early and to not have prisoners go, or not have convicted criminals going to prison. Now, one of the, or among the interesting sort of facts that seem to be coming out is that in Britain, at least, in the case of violent knife crime, which is 99.9% non-white, but in the case of violent knife crime, this is attempted murder, actual causing bodily harm, that sort of thing, assault with a deadly weapon, that less than half of these people actually go to prison, and that half of that, more than half of those, again, the numbers vary between 50 and 60%, are being released early. And when I say early, I don't mean a day or two before but much earlier. So they're giving a 10-year sentence, but they're out on the street within 12 months, that type of thing. So it seems crazy that this would be a solution to this type of serious crime. Now, I'll go into a few areas here. Now, I've known a few, recent mass immigrants from dangerous third world countries where the murder rate is off the charts. The murder rate is so high, the authorities don't even bother counting or investigating. I've been to third world countries where you just see dead bodies floating down the river, and I was aghast when I first saw this, and mentioned it to the one of the local people, like the hotel manager type sort of person. Did you know I saw bodies floating down the river? Thinking that I'd sort of observed some major issue that everyone would get excited about, but he just shrugs the shoulders. Oh no, hundreds of people. Police don't bother looking into it. They either don't have the resources, they can't be bothered, or they're aware that there's local feuds between gangs or tribes or villages or whatever, and they accept that there's just going to be a death rate from these differences of point of view or conflict or so on. So they just don't bother with it. It's too hard. They've got bribes to take and corruption to engage in. So why bother about a few murders of people that don't matter anyway? Now, in these countries, remember, the death rate, say, from in childbirth and so on, is quite high, the deaths from diseases. So they see life very differently. Not every citizen there is a taxpayer or a worker or a consumer. They're not. They don't have any sort of connection, if you like, to the country and its running or its management or its economy, really. So they're just surplus to requirements. So if these people die, well, who cares? And that's the attitude in these third world countries that have these high crime rates that I, certainly I've seen. I was in one country where there was some sort of a riot and the police just turned up with rifles and started rando shooting people. That never even got into the international media. If it did, I didn't see it. This was pre-internet when I saw that, but I was staggered that these sort of things would go on. Something that would be unthinkable in a Western country, were just how things were. Now, and going to countries where places like India and so on, where you just walk over dead bodies in the street. That's nobody cares, nobody looks, and it may be. And bear in mind, in a hot climate, the decomposition rate is quick. It's very, very fast. It can be hours, the whole day before the cleanup crew appears. Maybe even the next day. And dead bodies of all sorts of animals lying around is quite astonishing. So there's a very different attitude. Now, these are the third world people, or many of them at least. These are the third world people who are being brought into the West in vast numbers. and they're bringing these attitudes with them. And you saw recently in Britain, there's a bunch of black youths or younger men, I don't know how young they were, but young men running around with machetes, having a machete running street battle with machetes in this seaside, beachside town in the UK. And the police seemed remarkably slow to respond and deal with it. They seem to totally lack courage and lack conviction when the perpetrators are black or brown, but they're oh so tough when there's a riot or well, not even a riot, or just a protest march or something. If it's white people involved, and the police suddenly become very, very muscular and tough, very determined. You've got to wonder what's going on there. Nonetheless, these people from these third world, again, you have to remember the sort of life they're leading there. How murder is just a shoulder shrug issue. So it's nothing like it is in the West. And so when they come to the West, they bring these shoulder shrug attitudes to murder or violent knife crime with them, and they can't understand why do you white people get so upset by this? I've done nothing wrong. This is how life is where we come from, and because they're brought over in such large numbers, they can form these social sub-communities where these ideas and attitudes and views and ways of living are perpetuated. So they're not integrating. They're not saying, well, gee, maybe murder is a bad thing, or maybe running around with a machete and hacking at people is not the done thing. Right? They don't have that. Now, the same could be said, if you like, in across the United States, where in the black cities like Baltimore and parts of Chicago and so on, that every week, and certainly every weekend, there's shootouts where this is black people shooting each other, rival gangs shooting each other, and it barely gets mentioned. And you can have 50, 60, 70 black people getting shot and 10 or 20 of those being killed by gunfire, and the international media just don't touch it, just not interested. The local national media in the United States don't touch it. You may get a mention in the local Chicago, may get a mention in the local Chicago media, but it's not guaranteed. So 70 people can be shot, 20 of them shot dead, and nobody wants to talk about it. But it's blacks shooting each other. Now, and there were a number of, I was in one, it's years ago now, but I was in one American city, and there was a shootout, some shootout, not far from the 5-star hotel that I was staying at, and it was some black people shooting each other again. and I mentioned this. It was I mentioned it to the maitre d' in the restaurant, the breakfast restaurant that I went was sitting out having breakfast, and I said, well, it's safe to go outside. There's all these shootings, and oh yeah, the black people shooting each other. That's no, but don't worry about that. That's irrelevant. They're not interested in you. They're interested in shooting each other. And his casual manner about it surprised me. He's a white guy, but his casual manner, I just couldn't believe that a guy, there's been shooting murders a few blocks away from where we are, but it's nobody. So clearly they were immunized against it, and so the idea is that if black people shoot and kill each other, or stab each other, or machete chop each other, or those sorts of things, that's kind of not really that big a deal. Why would you worry? Why would you bother putting people in prison like that? And, it's not really that big a deal. Now, if a white person stabs a black person, whoa, that is international headline news. White supremacy, Hitler, Nazi, But when it's blacks killing each other, nobody really cares. Maybe because they've got equal social power or something. Is that what the ideological fanatics think? So coming back now to this idea that the prisons are now overflowing. Now, the prisons were not overflowing before mass migration. They now are overflowing, even though there's been additional prisons added. And we need to understand that the majority of by far and away, the majority of the new inmates coming in are not local white people. If they are white, then they're like, in Britain's case, they're like from Poland or Romania or something, or Albania. The prisons were overflowing because of mass migration. So let's get down to that. Now, even though all Western governments in unison all say, well, the big problem is white supremacy, Hitler is the problem. Even though they all come out with that narrative, the reality is that on the police and internal security services watch lists, that between 90 and 95% of all the people on the watch lists are not local people. They're not white people at all. These so-called boogeyman white supremacists, that's bullshit, and we all know it. But they like to make out that it's the problem's the white supremacy. It's not, and it's never has been. So the problem is the mass migrants coming in with very different attitudes to social harmony and integration and getting on with people. They don't, and they don't see they're doing anything wrong. Well, that's kind of how it is. I've been disrespected, and the way you deal with disrespect is get out a machete and chase someone down. That's and they don't see that there's a problem with that. Well, why? Why can I not sort of, well, why should I rely on white man's law and white man's courts? That's bullshit. The law of the machete is how. Now, coming back to the releasing, so the prisons were overflowing. Now, I don't know how many white political prisoners are. For example, in Britain, they imprisoned somebody for, I think it was 2 or 3 years, for pointing out that it's okay to be white. It's okay to be. Now, they did this big fancy narrative about it. Yeah, we had to do a raid on his house and he had a swastika. They did all that stuff. But the reality is, all the guy did was say it's okay to be white. And he got 2 years in prison. But if you run around with a machete and cut someone up or kill someone, you may not even get that. You may just be able to get just get put on some sort of good behavior bond. Now, the argument sort of on the other side is, well, putting these people in prison for not, chopping people up with machetes, it doesn't show they come out and they're just as inclined to wave machetes around as when they were. So that doesn't work. So therefore, why put them in prison? Well, okay, well, what does work then? What is the approach? We'll assign them a black leftist ideological fanatic social worker. That'll fix it. Well, no, that's not going to fix it. Let's get real about that. So now there could be other programs, for example, a strict house arrest with ankle bracelets and that sort of thing. But if they take the ankle bracelet off or don't accept the home detention requirement, what can you threaten them with? What's the next step? These are people that come from places where they kill you if they don't like what you're doing, and they come to a Western country where they say, well, naughty, we'll put you in prison, and even then we'll only put you in there for a little while, and we give you, comfortable lodgings and free food and so on. To them, that's like, okay, well, you people must be really weak if that's what you do. So they this concept of justice and fairness, that they have no concept of it, and they just see it as weakness. So the likelihood of them being repeat offenders is high. So your options sort of start to run out. What do you do with these people? So clearly deportation is, in my view at least, the only answer here. And if people come from these high crime communities, then, places and they commit these crimes, then they have to go back to where they came from. That's where they'll be comfortable. They'll be around people that live and act and believe and socialize in the way that they understand, and that's a good thing. And they're being taken out of a community or a nation state, if you like, where they've got no idea how to integrate and socialize. So that's really the only option. I think deportation. So this idea of people guilty of, recent migrants or first generation born, there seems to be not a whole lot of difference with a lot of these folks. They don't respond to the same concept of law, justice, accountability, and these sorts of things that the indigenous population do. So if they want to commit the crimes and want to continue breaking the law and committing these crimes and don't see that they've done anything wrong, this is important, then they should just be deported. Hey, we'll pay for you to go back to your country of origin. Now, there's a number of other arguments, and I'll do another video on this, that are saying, well, we don't know where these people really came from because they've lost their passports. That's bullshit. They trashed their passports or threw them overboard. So that's not true. Nor is there any bags of passports have been found floating in the English Channel, which could easily be picked up and then used to identify people that claim that they have no papers. But that's not done, strangely. Well, I don't know why not. Because thousands of the illegals could be identified this way, where they came from and country of origin, that sort of stuff. And passports they've been able to hang on to for years quite successfully suddenly magically disappear just as they arrive, at Dover or in England. I mean, that's ridiculous. Why anybody would accept that as a plausible argument is quite beyond me. But this idea of that these people should be afforded every benefit of the doubt, even when committing these crimes, that simply is ridiculous. And they do need to be, I think, again, just restating, they do need to be deported. And that's the only solution. I can't see another solution. Socializing these people into the Western society, even when they've been born in Britain, doesn't work, or born in the West, that doesn't work. I don't know how many generations it will take. If you look at a lot of the Middle Eastern migrants and from the Indian subcontinent and so on, even 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 generations on Western born, they still don't see themselves as local people and still don't socialize and still send back to the village of their ancestors for husbands and brides and so on. So the socialization process just isn't occurring. And this is reflected in the various illegal behaviours. Now, it seems insane that white people get locked up in prisons for ideological, political type crimes, such as saying it's okay to be white, and the government goes to exceptional lengths to build a case against these people. We found a swastika, that sort of stuff. But and get politicised judges to give verdicts and so on. Whereas the leniency against machete-wielding, murderers or people have committed vicious assaults and so on, the leniency is quite astonishing. Now, the idea that between 50 and 60% of those committing repeat machete and knife offences are being released back into the community is just beyond comprehension. I suppose you could, maybe another way is you find them such a vast amount of money that they have to leave and go to another country just to escape that. Maybe that's an indirect way of encouraging them to self-deport. But beyond or outside of deportation, I can't see an answer to any of this. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.